Outrageous. This is absolutely outrageous. All of us saw with our own eyes that Quentin was alive and well before you killed him. Yet you dare say that he was just a corpse. How absolutely ridiculous. Jacob's rage burned to a whole new level, and he wanted to rip Dustin apart. Pete, do you take us for fools? What makes you think we would believe your bullshit? Exactly. You were the one who killed Quentin. We all witnessed it. The crowd was furious, and their suspicions towards Dustin grew even stronger. How dare he deny killing someone and even use such a ludicrous excuse to clear his name? Did he think they were 3-year-olds? Young man, do you know what you're talking about? Hector said with a frown. He had tried to give Dustin a chance to explain himself, but his words only grew more outrageous. I know you guys don't believe me, but I have proof. Dustin walked to Quentin's corpse and ripped Quentin's clothes off, exposing patches of red lines to the crowd. Do you see this? This is corpse plaque. Dustin shocked everybody again. Corpse plaque? Everybody looked at each other skeptically at hearing those words. On the one hand, they were taken aback by what Dustin said. On the other hand, they were skeptical about whether the corpse plaque was real. Pete, is it corpse plaque just because you say so? What if those are just normal bruises? Jacob said with a frown, still in disbelief. I can prove that it is really corpse plaque. At that moment, a bespectacled man suddenly stepped forward and said with a shocked expression, I used to be a doctor, and I'm very familiar with corpse plaque. What's more, judging by the corpse plaque on his body, Quentin has been dead for at least 12 hours. The moment he said that, everyone's expression changed. How could that be? Quentin was still up and about just now. We all saw it clearly. That's right. There are so many witnesses. How could it have been a sham? Besides being shocked, many people were skeptical because this revelation was hard to accept. I was also wondering how a living person could have such serious corpse plaque on his body, the bespectacled man said in astonishment. Dustin, what's going on? Natasha asked in confusion. She also couldn't believe that the Quentin she had seen earlier was actually a dead body. I already said that Quentin was already dead, but somebody was controlling his body with witchcraft. Dustin continued explaining. I believe you guys must have heard of the rumors of corpse possession in Iden. This is similar to corpse possession, but the technique of it is far more refined. That's nonsense. How could dark magic like corpse possession exist in this world? Jacob demanded. If you haven't seen something before, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. There are endless branches of the mystic arts that are very strange. Corpse possession is nothing in comparison, Dustin said plainly. Pete, you can't solve the case merely based on corpse plaque, Jacob said stubbornly. As a warrior, he only believed in his own fists. You really don't believe anything I say, huh? Fine, since you still doubt me, then I'll enlighten you today. Dustin suddenly pulled out a silver needle and stabbed it into the space between Quentin's eyebrows. A rumbling sound filled the air. A little while after he plunged the needle, Quentin's body suddenly started convulsing. Then, black blood started flowing uncontrollably from his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. After a few heaves of Quentin's chest, little black snakes started slithering out from every orifice of the corpse. Snakes. They're snakes. Witnessing this scene, the crowd lost their composure and retreated in fright. Anyone would get goosebumps just by imagining snakes slithering out from a person's head. How could this be? Jacob was stunned and he couldn't really believe his eyes. It was his first time witnessing such a strange incident. The Dark Lord. It must be the Dark Lord's doing, some members of the Harmon family started shouting. From time to time before this, some Harmon family members would die sudden deaths, but none of them had been as terrifying as this incident. How very brutal. Hector frowned deeply, looking distressed. Someone had killed Quentin first, then controlled his body with witchcraft to poison the whole Harmon family. These tactics were not just cunning but vicious. Nobody other than the Dark Lord could be capable of it. I'm sure you guys believe my words now, Dustin said at the perfect timing. Jacob was hesitant to speak. Although it was hard to accept, the facts were laid before him, and he had no choice but to believe it. Dad, the truth is out. Won't you ask your men to fall back? Natasha said. Fall back. Hector gestured with his hand for the guards to retreat. Hector. He is my only son. He can't just die for nothing, Trent wailed. He was sitting collapsed on the floor. Jacob. This incident has nothing to do with Dustin. Our hatred should be directed at the Dark Lord, Hector said grimly. But Trent opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. He couldn't bring himself to accept this revelation. Trent, don't worry. Quentin's death will not be in vain. We will find the Dark Lord and avenge Quentin, Hector promised. Ah, my poor son. Trent sobbed sorrowfully. Hector sighed and patted him on the back in consolation. Then, he turned to look at Dustin and asked the question everybody was curious about. How could you tell? I already realized that something was off since yesterday, but I couldn't be sure. Only when I got close to Quentin today did I realize that his face was deathly pale, and his limbs were stiff. There was even a smell of rot on him. Although the incense covered the smell of rot, I still managed to notice. Of course, I did not act rashly. The main question I had to find the answer to was who was controlling Quentin's body and what this person's motive is, Dustin explained. Then have you found out? Hector asked. Dustin nodded and said, of course, I've already found out who the perpetrator is. Who is it? Hector narrowed his eyes and clenched his fists subconsciously. This person is so near yet so far. Dustin looked around and pointed at a pretty young woman beside Trent. It's her. Her. Everybody looked in the direction he was pointing in and immediately frowned. Me. The young woman was stunned. Bullshit. You speak nothing but nonsense. After a moment of shock, Trent got worked up. You idiot. You just murdered my son, and now you're slandering my wife. What are you trying to do? Dustin, do you know that she is my sister-in-law? Hector asked with a frown. Of course I do, Dustin said calmly. Not only is she your sister-in-law, but also the perpetrator of this incident. She is the mastermind behind controlling Quentin's corpse.